The world is dead, and all you have left are your gun and your ride. You're a scavenger, living, or better said surviving, in a world that can be best described as a combination of Mad Max, Escape from New York, Fallout, Stalker, and Metro. The world as we know it was destroyed by a nuclear war, and the descendants of the survivors of the nuclear apocalypse are now carving out their meager existence among the ruins. You're just another scav, a wastelander who gets by exploring ruins, pre-war buildings, and searching for artifacts and scrap, which is basically the currency that is being used by the survivors. Ashes 2063 is a total conversion mod for Doom 2, and the first great news you're going to hear in this review is that it's naturally free due to it being a mod, right? If one would take all the ingredients that make up this mod and look at them as separate parts of a final product, one would have to argue that it's a retro shooter without too many surprises. Apart from some mechanics that are not totally new, but rather uncommon in such games, there is nothing revolutionary here. And Ashes is one of those games that proves that nothing revolutionary is needed to create an exceptionally good game. But it's also proof of another concept: how small details that show the passion and the dedication of the developer can add up to create such a unique experience that all elements that are formal and already seen 1,000 times before get pushed into the background, if they're sound enough by themselves. Which basically means that all of these details add up to a unique experience backed up by the old and proven concepts. Being what basically comes down to a Doom mod, Ashes is a homage to classic boomer shooters. The movement is frantically fast, which is not always the best thing, since your character can sometimes feel like he's skating around on ice, which mostly is a problem when there are platforming sections. Luckily, you can toggle the default sprint to lower your speed a bit if needed, while the gameplay loop basically consists of see bad guy, shoot bad guy, collect some scrap, shoot more guys, find key. Everything is done so tastefully, with an obvious and permeating inspiration that ranges from the classic boomer shooters to 80s action movies, that it is no takeaway from the overall experience. Let's get the most obvious thing out of the way right away. The soundtrack to this game is just, well, amazing, or as the cool kids would say these days, it slaps. John Weekly, or Primeval Music, link in the description, made one of the coolest, most unique soundscapes. The music, mostly keyboards intermixed with rock or heavy metal sections, fits the setting most perfectly. The range of the soundtrack is impressive as well, from tracks that just pump you up for all the boomer shooter things you're about to do, to atmospheric tracks where dark radioactive caverns, basements, and ruins are enriched by the absolutely dark and broody slower tracks. The soundtrack often reminds me of Tiberian Sun or Brigador. This soundtrack is one of my favorite video game soundtracks ever, and along with Arcanum, Diablo 2, Edge of Wonders 1, and Divine Divinity, something I will listen to regularly. While Edge of Humanity is my favorite track, the song you've heard in the intro of this video, and which is usually featured on the outer screen after a mission, there are plenty other songs that are worth mentioning. Of course, these short samples do the soundtrack no justice, and there's certainly no better way to actually enjoy them than playing through the game. The graphics are just what you would expect out of a Doom 2 mod, a nostalgia-fueled tribute to the golden age of boomer shooters. I really do think it is a matter of nostalgia and taste for games like this, but personally, I feel like the graphics are perfectly viable to what the game is set out to do. There is a special and endearing charm to the way the enemies, environments and weapons are presented. It's very easy to immerse yourself in the whole creation, graphics and audio included. The audio effects are diverse and rich. Enemies have voice lines and effects, be it growls or bandits calling you out, mutants informing you they'll find your liver pretty tasty. Environmental sound design is also excellent. This becomes especially apparent in some parts of episode 2. Creaking doors in abandoned houses, pipes cracking in dark underground facilities and cellars, growling, strange noises. Some serious inspiration was taken from Stalker here, especially with the way the game baits you with sounds and creates utterly tense moments out of nothingness. This presentation, that is the audio and video design taken as a whole, does a lot for the game, especially for the overall atmosphere. Along with the story, which is mysterious enough to remain interesting, but not so heavily in the foreground to absolutely draw all your focus on it. The game still leaves you enough freedom inside the framework of the fantasy the mod presents. The game also features RPG elements with settlements, traders, NPCs and side quests, which are available from hub areas that you will be able to visit at certain points of the game. This element of the mod is amplified and much stronger in episode 2. Episode 1 remains in the general framework of your main mission and offers very little freedom to do anything besides that. Due to the game being a Doom mod, the shooting sections are very tight, the gunplay is excellent. However, due to the fact that we are indeed in the post-apocalypse, a tactical approach is sometimes more sound. You will often hurt for ammo, so that means that you will often have to plan for every bullet, and dealing with muties or bandits with a crowbar, Gordon Freeman style, might just have to cut it to save ammo. The weaponry feels awesome, and I like the fact that it has found a middle ground between scavenged weaponry and professionally made equipment. You won't be using Fallout 4-like pipe abominations, but you can certainly see the wear on some of the weapons you will be finding in the wasteland. Much love has been put into the details. Alternative firing modes, reload animations, modding weapons with scrap. It's the little things. For example, your basic shotgun will have a much faster reload if you don't shoot all the shells and do a full reload. Doing a full reload is risky, since your scav will have to manually push the first shell into the gun and reload it that way. This can later be mitigated by upgrading the weapon with scrap, changing the whole reload animation and making it faster. There are unique items that you will be using as well, a lamp that is recharged by sunlight, portable radios, portable medkits and other goodies. Ashes also features a radiation system which is rather simple. If you take enough rats you will start losing HP. There are certain items that mitigate radiation, but for the most part it's enough to just avoid an irradiated area and the meter will reset. Rats are featured in certain areas, environmental puzzles and later enemies which have a way of throwing grenades at you that raise your rats to extremely high levels. As mentioned before, the gunplay remains the centerpiece of the gameplay experience. However, you will have the classic way of achieving progression in a level, finding keycards, keys, and solving simple environmental puzzles. From time to time you will have your bike with you, therefore you will be able to cruise through the wasteland. A neat touch is that you can get off your bike at will, and that gives you the possibility to explore some side areas, kill some bad guys, and get on with moving to your next main destination. Saving main spoilers for later, but the first episode, along with the prequel, Dead Man Walking, feature rather linear campaigns. The missions are what you would expect out of a retro shooter, along with some more unique, sequence-breaking moments that add flavor and break the usual FPS gameplay loop. For example, the trading and dialogue in quest hubs or the mission where you head out on your bike. But episode 2 is where the whole concept really takes off. The missions are more fleshed out. Generally, the episode is longer and offers a lot more gameplay, and the whole concept is changed on a fundamental level. In episode 2 you are presented with hub areas featuring side and main content. The way you handle these missions and the order in which you tackle missions are mostly your own choice. The whole idea behind it being to offer the player a lot more freedom and to turn the game into something one could almost call a Stalker-like. Episode 2 features surprisingly much dialogue, especially flavor dialogue that can be seen as a way to further flesh out the world around you. I found it well written and decently interesting, but the hubs can be a bit dialogue heavy, especially since you will have to cycle through a lot of dialogue just to progress, even if you're not really interested in what the NPCs have to say. I'm generally impressed by how much progress was made between episode 1 and 2. The step up in scope, storytelling, NPCs and quest hubs, as well as enemy design is inspiring. Esches took great inspiration from games like Metro, Stalker, and the first Fallout game. Environmental design is almost always intended with a certain atmospheric touch. The atmosphere some of these environments are able to conjure is very impressive, especially with the simple and dated graphics. One thing I would like to point out as a critique is the unclear progression in some parts of the game. Be it that it's not always perfectly clear how to progress the story and what needs to be done. There are also certain map layouts on your missions where you might pull a lever or a switch without any idea what it does. There is no indication to some of these, and you may wander around aimlessly just to figure out what exactly was activated. A small camera indicator or clip which would show a passage opening or something changing on the map would really be helpful with these situations. However, I never found the progress frustrating, and I don't think it ever took me longer than 10 minutes to figure out a way forward. Another feature, if you would like to call it that, is that you can shoot certain NPCs which are important. In episode 2 I had a moment where you're supposed to talk to bandits and they look the same as all the bandits you've been shooting for hours already. Naturally, I pulled the trigger from a safe distance, only to find myself soft blocked with a gate that I can't open. Some people online are claiming that there is a certain way to progress even if you did that, but I could not find that and had to reload. An indication, or at least a unique model for that NPC would certainly have helped with such issues. Another thing which should not be seen as a critique, but rather something I hope for in the future, is the enemy variety. You will basically always be facing the same two enemy groups or clusters. They're either human raiders and bandits, or mutants. While that makes perfect sense in the game and lore, it is apparent that a greater variety of encounters could have been refreshing. Episode 2 is especially heavy on mutant-only combat in the second half of the game. While the enemies, especially mutants, are greatly designed, unique, recognizable, and all feature some sort of behavior and special abilities, it still would have been great to see more of them. Or at least meet them in less encounters, which would make them more scary and meaningful when they do appear. However, I appreciate the story focus and encounter design, and the game stays faithful to what it is set out to present to the player. There are no moments that will break your immersion by encounters that are obviously gamified or devoid of sense. The story is quite intricate, but I feel like there are many unknowns and what-ifs that are left for the player to explore. If you want to avoid spoilers, skip to this timestamp. We'll tackle the story as it actually unfolds in-game. As far as I understand, Dead Man Walking takes place first. You are waylaid by raiders, they shoot you, leave you in a ditch, and make off with your bike. You're out for revenge and you want to get your bike back. A simple, fun story which gives you enough context for all the shooting you're about to do. This episode features linear missions, and the main difference I found to episode 1 and 2 is the somewhat more maze-like level design and the skillful play of dark areas where you will have to manage your lamp carefully. You track the raiders down to a nuclear power plant, retrieve your bike, and race out while the whole place explodes behind you, featuring a scene that is probably only rivaled by Lemmy's resurrection in Motorhead's Killed by Death. The story setup for episode 1 is simple as well. You find a radio on one of your runs. Certainly, it will be worth something to some trader, but you hear a strange transmission, the voice of a woman. Intrigued, you decide to investigate. However, the world around you is infested by rats, mutants, gangs, and God knows what else. All you have is your gun and your bike. It's ride or die in this wasteland. While these are again linear missions, broken up by a bike ride sequence and quest hubs, along with some secret levels, the story leads you on chasing the mysterious signal. You track the signal to the city only to find out that an AI, Athena, has been sending out the signal. Athena reveals that she has been sending out the signal hoping that someone would come to help her with her directive, which is basically detecting and managing safe zones since she is disconnected from the outside world. She also mentions that a National Guard general came 3 years ago and was granted full access to her data, but they have since then sealed themselves off and haven't come back. The final fight against a huge and nasty mutant collapses the tower. You manage to reach the surface, but the tower crashes down on you and severely injures you. Episode 2, Afterglow, picks up right where episode 1 ended. Someone saved you and dragged you to a station. You wake up, only to find that the station has been under constant mutant attack since they brought you here, so the locals are, understandably, pissed. Your bike is trashed as well, so you set out to help the local community out, fix your bike, and move north to another town you heard of, following the footsteps of the mysterious general Athena mentioned. You visit several surrounding areas, helping out the locals and gathering replacement parts for your bike. However, while you move north, you are ambushed once again by what are raiders that seem to be working together with mutants. After some short villain introduction talk, you are thrown into a pit to fight to the death, only to find a way to escape. However, without your bike. This is where things get even weirder, since you find a mutant dog you will ride for the foreseeable future, only until you can get your bike back. The second hub, Prosperity, has a lot more to do when it comes to content. There are several local conflicts to resolve, a raider group which you can choose to join, destroy, or just find a middle way. This hub has you visit several locations, from the aforementioned raider camp to a nuclear power plant and a dome designed for growing plants. Oh yeah, if that wasn't enough, there is also a huge mutant army that has been heading steadily north, where you plan to go. After getting your bike back and solving most of the local issues, you head north to the site, Sigma, a nuclear missile silo, only to find it besieged by the mutant army. You're forced to fight your way through the invasion force alongside the defenders of the facility, which are hostile to a random civilian intruding on their business. However, a nuclear launch has been scheduled and your only hope is to cancel it. Once again, you meet Athena, which prompts you to move into the center of the facility with a computer so that she can cancel the launch. Naturally, as you try to do that, you're faced with the mutant lady that captured you earlier, and she's the final boss. After finally dispatching her, you're kindly informed by Athena that she plans to nuke the facility along with the muties, so you have around 5 minutes to reach a nearby nuclear shelter. You do just that, running over hordes of mutants that block your way with your bike, and the final flash of the nuclear strike and the shelter doors closing is where episode 2 ends. If you take the whole combination of guns, bikes, and post-apocalypse and try to explain why it's so appealing and unapologetically cool, you might just come to the conclusion that it consists of things we inherently find cool generally. While Ashes is not a game that really needs a philosophical analysis, I still would say that the two main elements, being your bike and the gun, represent freedom and danger, two things we find appealing and that we need in our lives, even if we only manage to live them through our PC screen. So, is Ashes 2063 worth your time? I'm not going to take my usual route of telling you how I feel about the overall game directly, but I am going to say this. I planned on diving more into the Doom modding scene, and now I'm afraid to. I'm afraid because Ashes is so damn good that I think nothing I play after it will come close to it, that I will always compare them to this one. To be quite frank and honest, Ashes is superior to most games that are released nowadays, especially AAA studios should take a long and hard look at what they're spending their budgets on. since a game like this can exist on an ages-old engine and simple passion. But it's quite clear what the problem here is. AAA studios usually don't lack funds, they lack vision and passion, something that can be bought. Ashes has grown to be one of my favorite games, and it's been a while since I felt kinda sad and drained after playing a game, realizing that all the goodness it gave and is giving has come to an end. If you ever fired up a PC game, there is no reason to not try Ashes. It's free, and more likely than not will just blow your mind. For all Ashes fans craving for more, there have been some great news a few months ago. Hard Reset, a prequel expansion for Afterglow, has been announced, and it will feature a linear campaign in the style of Episode 1. These already are great news, but Episode 3 is being worked on as well, so the project is far from dead or abandoned. Honestly, I can't wait for both things, and I would gladly pay money for all of this if the devs ever decide to monetize it. Be it as it may, we can end this review on multiple bright notes. One being that a great game is free for you to play right now, and the other, for a long time, die-hard fans of Ashes will be getting back on our bikes sooner rather than later.